Officially, I'm Abraham, but they call me Avi. I was born on the 4th of the 4th, 1907 in Easterplaat. My father got killed in an accident before I was born. And then my late mother remarried again to a man called Simon in Oudtshoorn in the Orange Free State. And I went there. And when I was 5 years old, my mother passed away. And then my stepfather remarried again, and I stayed with my stepfather till the age of 15. I don't remember seeing.
And did you ask anybody, or what did your mum or your family tell you?
Well, they told me that I can't see and I had to accept it. When I was about 5, an old Reverend Eisman taught me the Shema by heart. But the actual teaching I started when I was about 7. We had the Cheder, the Hebrew school, what they call the Cheder, we had it in our house. They didn't have a shul at that time. And my stepfather and stepmother had a kosher home. And the Reverend at that time was Josephowitz. He stayed with us because it was during the 1914-18 war, and he couldn't bring his wife from Lithuania to South Africa. So he stayed with us, and he taught me everything by heart. He told me there was no Braille in Hebrew, I had no alternative, but I had to learn everything by heart.
How did he teach you?
He said it to me, and I had to repeat it. And I remember when I started from Genesis, and it said there that the world was in darkness, and the Lord said, Yehi Or, let there be light. And I decided as a child, I want to feel that I am enjoying some light. No matter, even if I can't see, I would like to contribute light to humanity. That's what I always felt. When I was 15, they sent me to the Worcester School for the Blind. And there I learned Braille, and I also learned Afrikaans and English. I was the only Jewish boy there, and I missed the Jewish upbringing, but I had to accept it. And on Friday night and Saturday morning, they used to let me off. And I used to walk on my own those days. Wherever I lived, I walked on my own. And there was a Rabbi Stein at Worcester. And he and his wife said to me that whenever I have off, I must come to them. And I used to go to their house on Friday afternoon late and Saturday morning early, and the children used to walk with me to shul, and then I used to walk to the school again. We had to write an essay every week. The principal gave us a subject, and on Thursday morning we had to come to the class, and the principal used to correct our essays, comment on it, and tell us what we should have done, and tell us where he was satisfied. And we had to type the essay so that the principal could see whether we typed well. They taught me typewriting at Worcester. And this blind boy told me that the whole week the only thing that he typed was a letter to his mother. But on Thursday morning he postponed it. He thought he would be able to type it before school. And when he came, he found that somebody else was using the typewriter. And now when he'll come to the principal and not have his essay, he'll obviously get a punishment. So I asked him, did you post the letter to your mother? He said, not yet. So I said, I'll tell you what you must do. Take the letter, open the envelope, and take the letter that you wrote to your mother and put it on the table as you enter the class. And when the principal will read it, when he'll see my dear mother, he will not read the next contents of the letter. Then you tell him that you posted the essay by mistake, and this is the letter to your mother. You thought this was the essay.
It sounds like you were the ringleader at the Worcester school.
Well, no, I was just an ordinary pupil, but I thought I felt sorry for him.
You also told the story about Miss Mayring and the beds.
Yes, well, our institution was upstairs and the school was downstairs. And one morning I was going down the steps and we were writing a history test that morning. And I met Miss Mayring and she said to me, what can I do for you? So I said, can you write my history test? She said, no, that I can't, but I can make up your bed for you and you don't have to come up again. You can go to school and revise whatever you want to before the test. And the same morning, before interval, a boy came into my class and he said, the matron wants to see Abram Immerman upstairs immediately. So I thought that Miss Mayring did not make up my bed. Anyway, I don't know how I got up upstairs. I must have been as pale as anything, but anyway, I got up there and I was just thinking of an excuse. So she said to me that two ladies of the Transvaal visited the school for the blind, and the matron showed them how the blind people are neat. They make up their own beds, and it so happened that my bed was made up much better than all the others. So the ladies said they would like the boy who is so neat, they'd like to meet him. So then I got my breath back and I shook hands with them, and that is all. And then they said they were pleased to meet me, and I went down again.
When you were at the Worcester school, did you have any idea that you would end up being such a well-known cantor in South Africa?
Well, when I was at Worcester school, they wanted me to take up a trade. At that time, they had trades for blind people. I don't know whether they've still got them today. They had basket making, mattress making, piano tuning. So they said that I should learn a trade. And I have not been interested to remain at Worcester School longer than possible, because I was the only Jewish boy there, and I felt that I want to be in a Jewish atmosphere, in an environment of Jewish people. and I made up my mind not to learn a trade, but I made up my mind at that time, I was about 18, I made up my mind that I would like to teach children, and I also would like to conduct services by heart in congregations if I had the opportunity. And my relations were terribly against me. They said, "You are making the biggest mistake of your life. Who's coming to a blind person to learn for bar mitzvah? And which congregation will ever engage a blind person to conduct a service?" They said, "You are talking nonsense." And the more they discouraged me, the more determined I was to teach and to conduct services. I left my relations and I went back to my step-parents, to Oudtshoorn. And then one Friday night, the Reverend of Oudtshoorn was not feeling well, and they asked me to conduct a service. And there happened to be a traveler, a gentleman from Potchefstroom, and he said to me, "You know, I've got something to tell you. You are doing services by heart. How would it be if you get a boy to go with you and you go to certain congregations and you ask them to give you an opportunity to do the services either in the weekdays or Sabbath, and they've never heard anybody doing it by heart, and they let you do it, and whatever they want to give you, you leave it to their discretion, and you accumulate a few pounds, and you buy yourself a little property or something, and then you'll have an income, something to live from, and later on perhaps you may be able to get pupils to teach for bar mitzvah as well." So I listened to him, and I managed to get an Afrikaans boy who went with me. I got a concession from the railways. They said that I was a reader, they called me, and they gave me, the boy and myself, only one ticket we had to take. 2 tickets for half price. And I went to many congregations in South Africa, and they allowed me to conduct services. And whatever they gave me, I accepted with gratitude. And when I had some money, I went to Oudtshoorn, and there was a gentleman by the name of Mr. Edelstein, and he said to me, "I can recommend you with the money that you have, you can buy a small semi-detached cottage, and you can have a little income, rent." And I bought that place. Then I came to Oudtshoorn, and I conducted services there. And when I came to Oudtshoorn, the people said to me, "Oudtshoorn is a Jewish community." At that time, they called it the Little Jerusalem of South Africa. And they said to me, "Stay here in Oudtshoorn, board and lodge with some people, and you can be happy here because you've got a little income, and we will be nice to you, we like you." So I listened to them, and I stayed with the family Weinstein for 11 years. Simon Weinstein was a young boy. He was a little over 12, and he insisted that I should teach him for bar mitzvah. And when another boy, a great friend of St. Weinstein by the name of A.B. Lichter, who used to visit us, heard of Simon's suggestion, he also had to become bar mitzvah. And his father was a reverend at Mossel Bay, but he gave it up and he became a feather buyer. But anyway, his father could have taught him, but he said he wants Immerman to teach him because Simon Weinstein insisted on me teaching him, so he also wanted to be taught by Immerman. So I taught the two boys, A.B. Lichter and Simon Weinstein. They made no mistakes. And after that, I got quite a few boys. There weren't too many in Oudtshoorn, but those who were there mostly came to me for bar mitzvah lessons.
How were you able to remember the maftiras and haftarahs that you were teaching?
Well, I was taught by Josefovich, and I remembered it. And if I forgot something, my pupils used to have a book, and I did it by heart, and I wasn't ashamed to ask them to read it to me.
You were teaching bar mitzvah in Oudtshoorn.
Yes.
Were you also involved at the shul?
No, I used to do a service sometimes, on certain occasions, as a friendly gesture, or if one of the officials wasn't well, they used to ask me to conduct services, and I did it. I wanted to conduct services for high festivals, and I came to Cape Town, and I came to my relations. I made it up with them. I told them that I don't need any assistance, and I came to them, and I was there just before Rosh Hashanah, and they accepted me. And then I went to a few congregations, and I asked them whether there were vacancies in the paper, in the Zionist record, to allow me to conduct services for the high festivals. And they refused. They said, we would like to do it. We would like to listen to somebody who does it by heart, but we cannot accept you, because after all, if you do it by heart, it may just happen that you get stuck in the middle of a service and we've got no replacement. So then I was very disappointed and I couldn't help it. Eventually, just before Rosh Hashanah, I went to Woodstock, and there was a chairman by the name of Mr. Snaps, and he had a blind brother overseas, so he took an interest in me. So he said to me, look, I can engage you for the high festivals. Why? Because the Woodstock congregation was at that time, they had a big Jewish community, and they had a service in the shul and an overflow service. So he said, you can conduct service either in the shul or at some other occasion at the overflow. And if you do go wrong, don't be afraid to admit it. We can always get a replacement. I did the services, and people came from all the suburbs to listen to a blind person conducting the services by heart. And when the people came, and thank God, they told me that I made no mistakes, so then the other congregations gave me confidence and encouragement. And a few days after Yom Kippur, at that time, there was a Ponever Shul in Vandeleer Street. And Mr. Sandler was the chairman. and he phoned me that I must please come and conduct the services on Sukkot, and there was no talk of a substitute. And since then, I conducted services for more than half a century in congregations where they needed someone. I went to Salisbury in 1961, 62. I conducted the services at Claremont, at Maitland, at Barrow, at Belleville, at the Strand, at Oudtshoorn. I don't know whether I mentioned all the congregations, but anyway, at many congregations I conducted services for high festivals, for more at Mowbray. That was the last for over half a century. Then my family apologized for having refused to allow me to take up the services that I did. They said they didn't think that I could do it. Alexander Levine, he happened to be the principal of the Herzliya school at that time. And he found me, come to Herzliya for a month. If you like it, then you stay with us. If you don't, we won't have anything against you. So I was engaged to the Herzliya school. I used to teach them singing, and those boys who wanted to come for bar mitzvah, although there was another teacher at the school who taught for bar mitzvah, but eventually they allowed me too. They said that those who want me particularly, I could teach. The result was that I had many boys for bar mitzvah, and I stayed at the Herzliya school for 46 years.
What did you enjoy doing the most, though, at that time? What made you happiest?
Well, I enjoyed my work because the teachers and the committee and the children were marvelous to me. I used to come to a class, they gave me 10 minutes for singing, and some boys used to say that I saved them because the teacher asked them a question and they didn't know the answer, and I just walked in time. And I was so used to it, I never even used to feel I've got a watch that I can feel the time, and I never used to feel the time even. I more or less knew when the 10 minutes expired, and I used to go out, and the pupils used to argue. One used to say, I want to take Mr. Immerman to the next class. I want to take him. And the teacher said, what can I do? I don't know what to do. They all want to take you. So she used to choose 2 of them to walk. I could have done it myself, but they wanted to walk with me. So I couldn't say no. So they walked with me.
But you used to remember by heart which class was where and which Hebrew class was at which time.
Well, they gave me a timetable, and they read it to me, and I had to remember the timetable. And when they changed it, they told me, and I had to remember it again.
Abi, were you ever worried that you would not be able to remember, or did you ever feel nervous about serving the community and perhaps not being able to do?
Well, I made up my mind that I had to do it. Now, actually, remembering things have not been as difficult as concentrating. You see, when you conduct a service, there are many verses commencing with the same words, and then they go into other words, like V'chol ma'aminim, imru le'elokim, many other words. And I have to remember the verse that I read, and I have to remember the next one while the congregation says the verse. Now that is very difficult because you've got to concentrate all the time. And not only that, I have to realize that in my position, I am in a position where I have to do the right thing, because people watch me more carefully than they watch a sighted person. If a sighted person would make a mistake, they wouldn't even notice it. But me, they particularly watched because they wanted to see whether I conducted correctly, and I was conscious of that. And I had to do everything by heart. I had to remember, and I had to also concentrate, which was more difficult than to remember. But I made up my mind that that is my life and I must do it. And I prayed to God whenever I had to do something, to speak at an affair or to conduct services. People used to invite me to speak at weddings, at a brit, at a bar mitzvah, on many other occasions. In Oudtshoorn, they used to ask me sometimes to address the community, and I always prayed that the Almighty should help me, that I should be able to do it.
You say you don't think a human being can be perfect. What do you mean by that?
I don't
think that a human being can be perfect.
Well, I think that it is impossible to always to be perfect. Sometimes you do make a mistake, or sometimes you do say the wrong thing by mistake. One can't always be 100% perfect. Only the Almighty is perfect.
Because you were blind, were you able to remember better?
Well, I think so. I depended on my memory, and I tried to develop it. And I had to realize that I have to do it by memory. I took up the calendar as a hobby. You can give me any date, and I'll tell you in a few seconds the day of the week that it was. I did it as a hobby. At night, when I couldn't sleep, or when I had a little time of my own, I used to calculate the calendar, and that was my hobby. And I made up my mind that when a pupil comes to me, I must not teach him the wrong portion, because if I happen to teach one child the wrong portion, I would have never taught again. And I always used to check it very carefully, because there are some Sabbaths that you do not read the portion of the week. You have to read a different haftorah, a different portion, and you've got to prepare the child for that particular portion, because if you teach him the wrong portion, then the shul would not allow him to read. What would happen then would be that if they do allow him to read, the person who reads the Torah would have to read it first, and then he could sort of read it, which would be a disgrace to the parents and to myself. And I avoided that in my life. I've never in my life taught the wrong portion to any child.
But there was one child whose mother only told you after the second week.
No, well, that was a misunderstanding. She asked me to teach her child for bar mitzvah, and the child had a lovely voice and he could read. And I never asked her whether she wants the haftarah in the morning or she wants the Torah portion in the afternoon. I should have asked her, but I took it for granted that he could read the maftin in the morning. So I taught him that. So after a week or two, she came to fetch me one afternoon, to fetch him one afternoon. And she said to me, when the bar mitzvah comes, would you kindly propose a toast to the bar mitzvah? And those days I didn't travel on Saturday. So I said to her, depending where it will be, if it will be near the shul, with pleasure. But if I have to travel on Saturday morning, I didn't do it those days. So she said, no, you don't need to worry. He's having his bar mitzvah in the afternoon, and in the evening, after the service, we are having a dinner at Sea Point at an hotel, and you can come with us on Saturday night and propose the toast. So I said to her, but I am teaching him the portion for Saturday morning. So she said, no, it's in the afternoon. Is there a different portion? She didn't know. So since then, I made up my mind not to take things for granted. And luckily, it was only a week or two after I commenced. So I quickly changed it over for the afternoon. But since then, I used to ask the parents distinctly, do you want it in the morning or do you want it in the afternoon? Because one, as careful as you are, it shows you that one is not perfect. You can easily do the wrong thing. I got married in 1950 to a girl, Nora Kennard, and she passed away in 1967. And in 1970, I met Pauline Seagull, like the bird, Seagull. And I married her, and unfortunately, she passed away in 1974. She had a kidney disease, and the doctor said they could not cure her.
How did you meet your first wife?
Somebody introduced me to her, and I met her, and she said she was eager to abandon her nursing. She's been nursing for some time already, and she wanted to give it up. And I had enough money to support her, because I was teaching at Herzliya, and I used to teach for bar mitzvahs, and the parents used to pay me, those who wanted to pay me. Those who told me they couldn't pay, I never sent them back. I accepted them. As long as they told me they can't pay the truth, then I was satisfied. And I felt that I could support her, and I proposed to her, and she accepted me.
What was it like having a partner living with you, because you'd been on your own all the time before that?
No, I enjoyed having a partner, especially Pauline was, having been a nurse, she knew everything about health. She told me what to eat and what to do, and she was marvelous to me, and whatever I did happened to be right in her eyes.
Did you have any children?
Not exactly. I did whatever I could, and she was, and I tried to satisfy both, and that's what happened. I lived in Friedhoek, in Rugby Road.
Did you have a guide dog, or did you use a...
No, I never had a guide dog. I didn't want it because I used to walk about on my own, and I used to find the way. And there was one thing that I always, or rather two things that I always appreciated. One was I used to walk on my own. When I used to stand at the edge of the pavement and I had to cross a road, I didn't want to cross a road on my own because I don't know where the robot is, and I don't know what can happen while I cross. So I used to stand at the edge of the pavement and without asking anybody for years and years, people used to come up to me, people I don't even know. Do you want to cross the road? Please. And they used to take me across the road. People I don't know at all. I really appreciated that. Another thing I appreciated was that my former pupils whom I taught used to see me in the street walking on my own, and they used to stop the car and they used to say, I'm in a terrible hurry, but I must stop the car and I must come and say hello to you before I go on my journey. And I always used to tell my wife, I said, I really appreciated it because they could have easily passed me, I would have not known, but they did not. And whenever I used to come, even lately, to Oudtshoorn, or wherever I used to come, my former pupils always used to come to me and say, hello, you remember? You taught me for Bar Mitzvah. And many of them, I even remembered when their Bar Mitzvah happened to be. Some of them I don't, but some of them I still remembered the portion that I taught them.
Were there any other hobbies that interested you at that time, or was it mainly Yiddishkeit and being involved with teaching?
Well, I was always interested in Jewish affairs, and I liked classical music. I used to listen to the radio, and I used to even go to Bioscope, and my wife used to ask me what do I think of the picture, and I used to listen to the voices, and then I used to concentrate, and I knew exactly what was happening. But I haven't been, for years and years, I haven't been to a Bioscope.
What did you do after your second wife died?
I remained in Friedhoek, and I remained on my own. I had a girl who used to come in and cook for me and clean the flat, and otherwise I used to do everything those days myself. I used to shave and bath and wash and dress. I did everything on my own.
And when did you decide to come to Highlands House?
Pardon?
When did you decide to come to Highlands House?
In September this year, because I fell a few times and I got hurt, and I felt that I couldn't do things the way I've been doing anymore. And I came to Highlands House in September, just before Rosh Hashanah. And then in January, my leg was painful, and Dr. Spilk came and he said I had to amputate my leg. And I was very disappointed, but I had to do it. And he said he doesn't think I'll be able to walk again, because if I could see, they could have given me an artificial leg. But he says you won't be able to balance yourself correctly. And then I had to accept life without the one leg. I had to accept it. One afternoon I was teaching a child for Bar Mitzvah, and in the middle of the lesson he burst out crying. Now, I never hit a child in my life. Neither did I send that child to a principal. If I had to tell a child something, if I thought he didn't learn the way he should, I used to tell them nicely that they've got to improve. But I've never in my life put a hand on a child. So I asked him, why are you crying? There's no need to. Even if you don't know your portion 100%, I'll help you. There's no need to cry. So he said his granny gave him a cake for me in a tin. And he left the tin with the cake on the bus. And he's going to get a hiding from his granny when he gets home. So I asked him to look up the lost and found property. They've got an office in Cape Town. So I phoned them and I told the girl who answered the phone that my pupil left a tin in a bus with a cake. If anybody brings it, I gave her my pupil's phone number. So the next week he came, he said she did phone him, somebody brought the tin, but not a cake.
What about the one boy who was so nervous that his parents phoned the doctor?
Well, that was one boy. I took him for a rehearsal and he read it beautifully. And on the Saturday morning, they phoned me as a last resort to talk to the boy because he's so nervous that they called the doctor because he told them he doesn't want to do his portion. He's sure he's going to go wrong. So I spoke to him on the phone. I said, listen, you had a rehearsal and you did it beautifully and there's no need to be nervous. And I will stand on the beamer. And if, God forbid, if you go wrong in a word, I'll assist you so quickly that people will not even notice it. But I'm sure you will not go wrong because you had a rehearsal and you did it well. And I'm not going to teach you another portion. You must be brave and you must go onto the beamer and you must do it and not disappoint your parents and the visitors who came from the Transvaal to your Simcha. So he went on the beamer and he never made one mistake. And afterwards he said he was sorry that he's been so nervous. Sometimes I had 4 bar mitzvahs on one Saturday and I couldn't be at the other 3. So I went to one. I had to decide. I had to discuss it with the parents. They had to let me off because it was impossible for me to be all over. I had one bar mitzvah at Claremont and one in Friedhoek and one in the Garden School and one in Skundersley, and they all happened to be on the same day. And I couldn't manage to be all over. So I had to explain to the parents. Also, a few times I had twins bar mitzvah. Now if you have a twin, only one can read the Haftorah. The other one has to read the Torah portion. And it happened that when I had twins, I used to discuss with the parents, I don't want the one to be jealous, and it's impossible, they can't both read the Haftarah, because even if the congregation allows it, it wouldn't be right, because they would say A read better than B, and you could not do it. So I used to discuss it with the parents, and they had to decide who must do the Torah portion and who must do the Haftarah. They had to give me the tip, and they had to tell me what to do. There were pupils who were retarded, and the teachers used to phone me. They said at the last resort, please take them over. I can't teach this boy. He's retarded and I can't teach him. So I taught him whatever I could. If I couldn't teach him the Haftarah, I told the parents I'll teach him a Torah portion of that week. But I did not prevent them from coming to me. I used to take them and I used to make the best. I had one pupil, he stuttered terribly, and he said he can't say the prayer. There's a bar mitzvah prayer they had to recite at the synagogue in front of the ark, and he couldn't do the prayer. He says he stutters. And the principal said to me, this boy stutters terribly, teach him a few blessings. And when I started teaching him, I realized that when he sings, he does not stutter. When he talks, he does. So I taught him the whole Haftorah, but only I told him he must sing it very slowly. And the prayer he could not say, he stuttered too much. He didn't want it, and I didn't want to force him. And the shul said that I was right. And I taught him to sing it slowly, and I taught the officials of the shul not to interrupt him whatsoever. So it will take a few minutes longer, but let him have his way. And they allowed him to sing it slowly, and he did the whole Haftorah. And the doctor who was in charge of him since his infancy was there, and he said, I put a new life into him, because they never thought that he would be able to do it.
You're very well known for your sense of humor. I remember at school you always used to make jokes.
Well, I liked making jokes, and I always enjoyed listening to jokes. And I realized one thing, that when you ask somebody, how are you, you expect them to say, I'm fine. Because once you start telling your trouble, they've got more trouble than you have. And when people ask me, why are you always happy? I said, I can't see why I should not be happy. Rabbi Apple, the chief rabbi of Australia, came to visit their home. And while he was speaking, Mr. Bloch, who is in charge of the shul here, came to ask me to propose a vote of thanks to the rabbi. Now, it so happened that the rabbi spoke about memories. That was my subject. He said that parents should tell their children and grandchildren their life story so that they can remember it. So I told him that I had to do everything by memory. And I made a little joke. I said, your name is Rabbi Apple, but in reality, I feel that you and your good lady are a lovely pair.
If you look back now over all the years that you've been involved in the community and growing up in Zastron and traveling around the country, which has been the happiest time for you and which has been the most difficult time for you?
Well, the most difficult time for me was when I had to travel from one place to another. It wasn't an easy task. And also, when I had to learn things by heart, things were not always easy. But I accepted life. I made up my mind that whatever happens, you've got to accept the difficulty with the good. You've got to accept whatever happens.
And what has been the happiest? Is there a specific time that you can think of that you've been the happiest?
Well, when I was happily married, then I was happy because I had companion and I had somebody to talk to always and to come to and to be in touch with, and it was a very, very happy time for me, and to feel that there were people who are interested in a blind person and who do for me the things that I did. I appreciated it. Yeah, I was always grateful for the fact that God gave me a memory that I could conduct services and that I could teach children and that I could be in touch with children and that I've been invited to affairs throughout my life.
How does it feel speaking about your life and sharing your memories with us here? How does that feel for you now?
Well, it gives me pleasure to think that not having my sight, that people take an interest in me and that people are nice to me, because they could have just left me and they could have said, well, he's a blind person and that's all. But they didn't do it. They took an interest in me wherever I've been. I've been in Oudtshoorn for 15 years. I was unmarried that time, and they used to invite me to all the simchas, and they used to sometimes ask me to speak, and even if they didn't, I didn't mind either, but they were very nice to me. And people in general treated me very well. I had disappointments in life, as nobody can always have everything you expect, but I never expected things that I could do. I tried not to trouble people as much as possible. I tried to do whatever I could. The things that I couldn't do, I had to ask others. But I tried to help myself, to support myself, and to look after myself the best way I could. More than that I couldn't do.
What would you like to say to the people who watch this video eventually?
I want to thank them very much, and I want to tell them that I believe that there is no such a thing as darkness in the world. There is light, but you've got to look for it, and you've got to search, and you've got to do everything in your power to bring happiness to humanity. That should be your aim in life.